sunshine. Round 6 of the 1997 Formula One Championship. In the pits for ITV, James Allen and Louise Goodman. Your race commentators, Martin Brundle and Murray Walker.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Catalunya circuit from our point of view. So what's going to happen to the weather? What's going to happen to the tyres? What's going to happen at the start? Well, let's deal with the weather first of all. It is totally unpredictable. There's a very, very high wind straining at the flagpoles. The girls with the large flags have been down on the grid, and some of them have been practically carried away. What's going to happen to the tyres? Well, this is a circuit where the left front tyre in particular takes a colossal pounding. We could have 3 pit stops in this race, which will last about an hour and 35 minutes if it stays dry, which it probably won't, because both Ferrari and Benetton are expecting it to rain. Williams are keeping stum, I think, about what they're expecting after their dreadful forecast at Monaco. What's going to happen at the start as you look at David Coulthard down there, 3rd position on the grid, and that's Jean Alesi, well up, 4th place in the Benetton. Well, the start is quite a long way in Monaco terms away from the starting grid. It's a climbing right, left, right into one of those long, long corners which place such a colossal load on the tyres. And if we go to form, Villeneuve has got, obviously, to be the hot favourite for this race. He is nearly 0.3 of a second faster than his teammate Heinz-Harald Frentzen in practice. He was faster than him in the warm-up this morning by 0.3 of a second. Interestingly, second fastest in the warm-up this morning was young Ralf Schumacher, who's starting 9th on the grid in the Jordan Peugeot. And he was 0.3 of a second off Villeneuve's time, ahead of Mika Hakkinen, who was 3rd, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who was 4th, Jean Alesi, who was 5th. Now, the Jordans are looking good to me here today. Michael Schumacher, as usual, is being very gloomy about his prospects. But last year, he won one of the most amazing victories of all time in Formula One, when this circuit was practically a wash, and he gave everybody else a Grand Prix driving lesson. Giancarlo Fisichella there is 8th on the grid. We're going down the grid in the Jordan now. That's Ralf Schumacher, Michael's brother. And the next one you're going to see is Johnny Herbert, 10th on the grid, and he's in the Sauber Petronas. The Petronas is the rebadged version of last year's Ferrari V10 engine. And now behind Johnny Herbert, Eddie Irvine, and he was a very unhappy 14th in the warm-up this morning, so 11th on the grid, 14th on the warm-up, 2.5 seconds off the pace. But, of course, in Monaco, he started 15th. That's Olivier Panis, who won at Monaco last year, the Frenchman in the Prost Mugen. And there is the second of the Sauber cars. We've been used this season to seeing Nicola Larini in it. But now, for the first time, Gianni Morbidelli, the young Italian driver who's driven for Ferrari, driven for Arrows, and had a big going off in one of the practice sessions this morning, replicated Gerhard Berger's departure and into the wall on the opposite side of the road from the pit lane at Estoril a couple of years ago. But Gianni Morbidelli was perfectly all right. Now, you see at the rear of the grid, the Rubens Barrichello and Jan Magnussen in respectively 19th and 22nd places. All 22 drivers who were trying to qualify for this race did so within the 107% qualifying limit, 107% of pole position time. Now, a reminder, Michael Schumacher leads the World Championship for Ferrari for the first time since he joined the team last year, just 4 points ahead of Jacques Villeneuve, and he is 10 points ahead of his teammate Frentzen, who is tying with Coulthard, Berger and Hakkinen, and Eddie Irvine in the second Ferrari is 3rd in the championship, 6 points behind Villeneuve, and off they go on the parade lap.
And we've got Gerhard Berger's stalled his car on the start line. He's not going to leave the grid on time. and that means that he'll have to start from the back of the field.
And that's bad, terrible luck for Gerhard Berger. Now, here they go into that climbing right-hander. As Gerhard Berger gets away, that means he'll be starting from the rear of the grid instead of 6th position on the grid, which is where he qualified. And that is a very severe blow. So now into the long turn 3. That's one of the ones that punishes the tyres so badly. From there into turn 4, this is the right-hander. They start to drop downhill now into a 55-mile-an-hour second gear corner. And that in itself leads on to turn 6, which they're starting to approach now. That is another left-hander. And then it's climb up towards turn 7. The sweeping right-hander, which you can see Jacques Villeneuve, who's leading Princeton round, followed by Coulthard, Lacey, Häkkinen, Berger is down. Schumacher and Fisichella together. There is Eddie Irvine, and you'll see Gerhard Berger coming round at the rear of the grid. Now they're approaching the starting grid. Martin, what are they going to be thinking of at this stage?
So they're actually travelling quite slowly again, which tends to happen when Villeneuve's on pole. You can see them weaving around there, trying to get some tyre temperature. I personally believe that does next to nothing. You need a lot more load than that in the tyre to generate any reasonable amount of temperature. In fact, what I used to do was really work the brakes up, because you can get 300 or 400 degrees centigrade in the brakes, and that tends to radiate out into the wheel and the tyre. It keeps the whole mass nice and warm. They just come out of the blankets on the start line anyway, but they very quickly go away, and they'll soon lose a couple of PSI on this lap if they're going too slowly, which they are, I believe. And that means the ride out of the car's lower. The car's going to be handling very poorly in those first few laps. So assuming now they've managed to keep some kind of temperature, the front runners are going to arrive on the grid some 45 seconds before the stragglers at the back get lined up. And you'll see anybody on their right-hand side of the grid will move over at the last possible moment to keep their tyres as clean. The line here, the racing line here, is on the left. You can see a Lacey pulling over very, very late. The line is on the left, so the right-hand side is dirty. And there's a sensor in the car and a sensor on each of the grid positions. They must line those two up. They're the jump start sensors. You can see the cars at the back hovering around. Ralf Schumacher's got his arms up. He's stalled the engine. I think they'll have to delay the start. I don't see any way they can start with the car in the middle of the pack with his engine not running. He's cruised up to his grid slot and let the engine die out. And yes, they've delayed the start. He will be pushed to the back of the grid. He will have to start at the back. Now, interestingly, will they allow Gerhard Berger to come through? I once came through in Adelaide, had my car pushed through to restart what I believe would be a completely fresh race. Let's see if maybe they will count that as one lap of the race, but will Berger be allowed to make his way through to take his original grid position? I think Ralf Schumacher will be put at the back now.
Well, bad news for Ralf Schumacher, good news for possibly Gerhard Berger, and good news for Eddie Irvine, because we've had some terrible happenings at the beginnings of races like this, notably at the Canadian Grand Prix some years ago when there was a Ferrari involved. But now you can see the yellow lights are flashing there, which means that the start has been aborted. So the orange lights flash until there's a new start time confirmed, and that may actually take quite a long time. But hopefully they're just going to send them round on another lap, and then Gerhard Berger will probably take up his rightful position, 6th on the grid, and Ralf Schumacher will have to drop to the back. And Ralf is not going to be at all a popular chap, because look, everybody's having to come out again. The drivers had built themselves up to see those red lights go out, all 5, to start the 65-lap race, which may now become a 64-lap race, because they have a formation lap and 65 laps. Now they've had a formation lap and will have to have another one.
Well, this is double bad news, because the tyres are just losing all of their temperature sitting there. I don't believe the teams will be allowed to change the tyres. I don't believe they'll be allowed to refuel. I think they'll call a restart very quickly. I think they can do it within 5 minutes if it's purely a driver stalled on the grid. Ralf Schumacher gesticulating to all of his mechanics, explaining why he stalled the engine. Now, you may say, I never stall the engine on my car. It could well be because it's an automatic, but let's assume it's not. And these cars are very, very clumsy when you come to the line. You don't want to put too many revs on because it overheats the engine, but at the same time, you need to keep the revs reasonably high to keep the battery up, and he let the engine stall.
In 8 seconds' time, the second formation lap will be starting with Gerhard Berger back where he was when the original grid was formed, 6th, and Ralf Schumacher is actually getting away. There's a bit of a discussion going on, but Ralf Schumacher gets away. Now, I'm a bit puzzled by this because, as far as I'm concerned with the rules, Ralf Schumacher should certainly be starting at the back of the grid. But nobody stopped him from leaving. You can see the 2 yellow Jordans there, with Fisichella weaving about in the background behind his teammate Ralf Schumacher, and Schumacher's obviously not dropping back.
No, well, he hasn't. Normally they have a marshal standing, an official standing with a yellow flag in front of you to prevent you getting away on your second green flag lap. And I think they'll have to radio him to tell him to drop to the back of the grid. What do you think, Marion?
Yes, I've just heard he has been told that he's got to drop to the back of the grid. It's a bitter pill for him to swallow, but it's his fault. He lost the engine.
Well, of course, you know, the whole race has come to a grinding halt because he stalled his engine. All of the television stations around the world have had to change their programming. Everything's happening. There has to be some kind of penalty for the driver to make him concentrate on the start and make sure he doesn't stall the engine. That's the organisers' way of saying, this is, you know, if you get it wrong, you're going to pay the price. Of course, it could be some kind of technical problem. Remember, the clutches, there's all kinds of sensors and systems to operate the clutch, or putting the car into first gear, or finding neutral, and it may not have been Ralph's fault entirely, maybe some system fault, but the net result is for Jordan and for Ralf Schumacher starting at the back.
Yeah, I see, you can see just the sole Jordan there, the yellow car, behind the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher. So that yellow Jordan is Fisichella's car, so somewhere out of our sight. Ralf Schumacher backs off and is now rolling round, well, driving round at the back of the grid, as for the second time. Yeah, Ralf Schumacher apparently has just said the car died on me. Now, we're with Heinz-Harald Frentzen now, and he will be dodging over to the other side of the grid to line up slightly behind his teammate Villeneuve.
Well, just to confirm, Gerhard Berger's car was pushed through the pack back into his original 6th place starting position. Better to be born lucky than rich today, Gerhard.
Yeah, watch him, watch him. You can see him. He's in the 6th position. Villeneuve pole position. Frentzen is 2nd. Coulthard in the silver McLaren is 3rd on the grid. Then it's Alesi Häkkinen and Gerhard Berger 6th. Let's hope they all get away. You can see the blank space in the grid behind Michael Schumacher's Ferrari. And that's the space that was occupied previously by Ralf Schumacher. 65 laps to go, and it is go. Now, lovely start by Villeneuve. David Coulthard's coming up quite well. Salo in the Tyrrell going for it. And someone sprinting through on the outside now. What's happening? It's Coulthard. David Coulthard has got ahead of Frentzen and Villeneuve. And he took the lead. Has he held it? No. Jack Villeneuve on the right-hander there has got past, but that was another meteoric start from David Coulthard in the McLaren, and he's not using it. And look at Schumacher. Incredible! Michael Schumacher has seared up through the field. He started way down in 9th position, and he's now up behind Villeneuve. I can hardly believe this. He's taken 7 places in just a few yards, not even half a lap. Villeneuve leads, Schumacher is 2nd. Now, significantly, Michael Schumacher is in the spare Ferrari. He had the 2 cars set up different ways, and he's opted for the one that's obviously right for the circumstances. Villeneuve leads, Schumacher is 3rd, and David Coulthard in the McLaren is in 3rd position behind 2nd place Michael Schumacher, and Frentzen has dropped right back as they come out of turn 9 in this 11-corner circuit, down towards turn 11 at 130 miles an hour to complete lap 1, go into the 2nd lap. And the Germans in the grandstand are going berserk. They see their man, Michael Schumacher, up 7 places, and in 4th position it's Alesi. Frentzen has been passed by Schumacher, Coulthard, Alesi and Häkkinen, and he's down in 6th position. Heinz-Harald Frentzen, to whom this race matters so much, has dropped from 2nd on the grid to 6th in the race. Jacques Villeneuve leads, Schumacher 2nd, Coulthard 3rd, so it is Williams, and then the Ferrari, and then the McLaren. You can see it's already dropping back, but I'm amazed at how close Michael Schumacher is, considering how gloomy he's been, and he was 1.7 seconds off the pace in qualifying.
Well, he's come from 7th to 2nd, but nonetheless, it's still an incredible performance. And remember, he had to go into the T-car in qualifying, and I don't believe his grid position represented just how fast he can go. But this is going to be a very, very physical race, and I think that puts Schumacher in good shape for that also. But Villeneuve's no slouch. Now watch, Frentzen bogs down off the line and has to have a second bite at it. Now look at Schumacher. He follows Coulthard through initially on the right-hand side, our right-hand side, and brakes laid up the inside, takes Frentzen, keeps it all together. Coulthard tries to go round Villeneuve. Villeneuve will not give. Coulthard ends up on the outside, has to get out of the throttle, and that gives Michael Schumacher there in 3rd place at the moment a run at Coulthard into turn 4. He obviously took him, and he's in a great position now for him.
David Coulthard is the fastest man on the track. He's closed the gap between himself and Michael Schumacher. David Coulthard just gone round in 1 minute 23.9, compared with Hill's lap record of 1:24.5. Early days in the race, heavy fuel load, they'll go faster. There is no sign of rain at the moment. The sky is dark and grey overhead. The flags are straining even more at the flagpoles as we join Michael Schumacher, double world champion, chasing Jacques Villeneuve, who is a very strong contender this year, but at the present moment is 4 points behind the man we're riding with. Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari, down to the very quick straight into turn 8. La Caixa starts to climb here. Now turn 9, that's about 75 miles an hour. Villeneuve ahead, and Michael Schumacher gaining a few yards on him. Now these are the last 2 corners. That is turn 10. Turn 11 coming up is absolutely crucial, because the faster you can get out of it, the faster you can go down this long straight. Now, Villeneuve was 0.478 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher on the previous lap. He's increased that lead by 0.3 of a second. Coulthard is still 3rd, and Alesi is now the fastest man on the circuit. Jean Alesi is catching Coulthard, who is catching Schumacher. And between the 2nd and 4th men, there are about 1.5 seconds. And in 5th position, it's Mika Häkkinen. So the 2 McLarens are well up, 3rd and 5th.
The pace is relatively slow. Remember, they qualified on a 16.5 for pole position. But I think the track is going to be very green. And by that, we mean we had a lot of rain briefly this morning, and there's been 2 races since, and that tends to lift the rubber off the track that the Formula 1 cars have put down over the weekend, and takes away a lot of the grip. And it's going to take time now for the drivers to find the new level of grip and to understand how hard they can push the car. This is Schumacher getting away well. That's brave going through the middle there. Had to lift out momentarily, and now he's got himself well positioned for the inside of turn 1. And he says, I'm going to brake after you, Alesi. Whenever you brake, I'm braking later. He can see the chaos ahead of him there. Now he knows he's going to have a run at Coulthard on the way out of turn 3.
And that was an absolutely sensational start. 7th when the race started, when the lights went out, up into 2nd place on the 1st lap, reminiscent of the great lap of Ayrton Senna in the European Grand Prix at Donington. Not quite as good because Senna took the lead, but now Villeneuve is extending his lead. The Canadian seems to me to be in control of things. He's 1.3 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher. Villeneuve has just made the fastest lap of the race so far, and we're on lap 5 out of 65. He's 1.3 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher. You can see how close the Ferrari is to the McLaren behind it. There is the gap before Jean Alesi in the Benetton. The Benetton going much better here in Spain than it has at previous circuits, because they've done a lot of work here testing and were able to get the heat into the tyres that they needed.
Well, I think Villeneuve's going to run and hide now for the rest of the afternoon. He has the fastest car on the circuit. We do know it is faster than the Ferrari, even with Michael Schumacher turning the steering wheel. There's going to be the scrap now that's going to be of interest to us, I think, is Schumacher, Coulthard, Alesi, Hakkinen, and then Frentzen. We've seen earlier in the year when Frentzen gets buried back into the pack, he hasn't seemed to make any impression thereafter during the Grand Prix. So it's an important test for him. He needs to close that gap to Villeneuve in the World Championship. He's 10 points behind him still, and he can't afford to drop another 5 or 6 to him today.
Right, now keep watching the leaders. Here's some good news for Damon Hill fans. He started 15th on the grid. He is now in 11th place. He's having a terrific battle with Mika Salo in the V8 powered Tyrrell with the Ford engine and new Ford engine. Hill is trying to get into the top 10, and he's on lap 6. He's yet to finish a race effectively in 1997. He's going well at the present moment. Johnny Herbert is in 7th place, 1.3 seconds behind Heinz-Harald Frentzen. The best the German can do is still only 6th place, and he is 0.8 of a second behind Mika Hakkinen.
Well, another guy had a great start. I saw him going around the outside of all the uncertainty was Mika Salo, pulling a full 7 places from his grid position too. So he's 6 places, so good starts all around for a few people.
Yeah, Mika Salo, who drove a brilliant race, a non-stop race at Monaco, but never mind that, because look now at David Coulthard. There he is, car number 10, the McLaren Mercedes. I say again, not with the brand new V10 Mercedes engine they used for qualifying, so effectively, which put him 5th on the grid and his teammate Mika Hakkinen, put 3rd and his teammate Mika Hakkinen 5th. But nevertheless, David Coulthard is hanging on to Michael Schumacher, who's been saying right up to this race for a long, long time, the characteristics of the Catalunya circuit do not suit the Ferrari. I do not expect to do well there. I will be happy if I finish in the points. And Coulthard is pushing very hard indeed. They're both edging away from Jean Alesi in 4th place, Mika Hakkinen in 5th position. That's the battle to watch.
Certainly is, and what it's going to be all down to is coming off of the last corner. How much wing has Schumacher got on the car? Can he really get a good drive out of that last corner? It's 140 miles an hour on the apex, the slowest part of the corner, and then maximum power on the way out, and a long, long straight. If Coulthard's car is good enough, he can stay with Schumacher through that, and then get a good slipstream on him down into turn 1. I don't see any other place where he's going to be able to get Schumacher unless Schumacher's tyres start to go away quite quickly. I think Coulthard has the better car here at the moment.
Well, there's 2 things still to talk about. I agree with you entirely, incidentally, Martin. There's 2 things still to talk about. One is tyre wear, which is dramatically going to affect this race as we ride with Coulthard chasing. 2nd place, Michael Schumacher ahead. The second thing, of course, is the strategy for the fuel and tyre stops. We may have as many as 3 stops. Last year, most people only had 1, but then the circuit was nearly awash in 1996. One of the wettest races we've ever had. By David Coulthard, you just saw his hand there as he's ripping a tear off his visor.
Well, I think we now have just seen that Coulthard is quicker down the straight in a tow. He didn't come off the corner too well. He caught Schumacher in that last corner, but had to get out of it because he was in the dirty and his car washed out a little bit at the front. So that's where he's going to take him into turn 1. But meanwhile, closing in behind them is Alesi and Hakkinen with Frentzen in the distance.
Yeah, Villeneuve is clearing off. 3.5 seconds he leads by now. Another fastest lap from the French-Canadian in the Williams. 1:22.6 compared with the lap record of Damon Hill some time ago, 24.5. So that's a new lap record for Jacques Villeneuve. But Schumacher is holding Coulthard up. He can't get past the Ferrari. That's giving Alesi the opportunity to close, and he's doing so in 4th position. Mika Hakkinen is right behind the Benetton. So we've got 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th together. Schumacher, Ferrari. Coulthard, McLaren, Alesi, Benetton, Hakkinen in the McLaren. Heinz Harald Frentzen must have some sort of trouble. He's 2 seconds behind Hakkinen, ahead of Herbert Berger, Fisichella and Salo in 10th position, still battling with Damon Hill 11th.
I'm not sure Coulthard is still close enough. He's hurting too much. His front tyres coming out of that last corner, staying in Schumacher's slipstream. We can't see Coulthard from there. Sure, Schumacher can. He's not really having to defend the line too much, so I assume David is not up alongside him on this lap, but that's the corner he's going to take him on the way into this complex. This is turn 3, the everlasting turn 3. It's really tough on the car, really tough on your neck. Michael Schumacher amazed me yesterday. He said, I said, really, how are the cars to drive these days? Are they tougher with the extra grip? He said, yeah, for the first time I came here in testing and I had a sore neck at the end of each day. And it's not often you hear him say that, if ever.
Well, if Michael Schumacher says that, it must be tough. He is without doubt the toughest and the fittest man in Formula One.
Well, that's a 10-second penalty there for Gianni Morbidelli. We told you about the sensors on the start line and the sensor in each of the cars. They can see it on graph paper a few minutes after the start itself, and it shows up if anybody moved before those red lights went out, and obviously Morbidelli did. That means Morbidelli is going to have to come into the pit lane and stop in his own pit garage, and he'll be timed by his own team. They trust the teams to do that for 10 seconds and then depart. So it's about a 30-second penalty all told when you've negotiated the pit lane.
Yeah, Gianni Morbidelli, who has replaced Larini in the Sauber team, hadn't driven in a Grand Prix for some 18 months, so he's a bit rusty, and Coulthard is going for it, but Michael Schumacher can see exactly where he is, but David is really harrying him, and I'll tell you how much, because Jacques Villeneuve is now 8.8 seconds ahead on lap 10 out of 65, and he's by far the fastest man on the race. This race is effectively being controlled by Michael Schumacher holding everybody up.
And this is where Schumacher's particularly so. The car looks evil going into that bumpy area there. He's run wide again, look. He looks evil on the bumps into those slower corners, and he's having to be so careful on the way in. And that means they're losing 3 seconds a lap at the moment to Villeneuve. And any minute now, Michael Schumacher's going to have to start driving very, very defensively, and they're going to lose even more time. Villeneuve's got it all, really is looking very good for him.
Yeah, another lap record for Jacques Villeneuve on lap 9. He's on lap 10 now, almost at the end of it. 1:22.5. He's really pulling away, building up the biggest possible cushion so that when he comes in to make his tyre and fuel stop, he will have as big a lead as possible and will be able to join down the field, but not in too much traffic, he hopes. That's the critical thing. So, into lap 11, and Villeneuve is already there. Now 11.6 seconds ahead of Schumacher. Coulthard.
Well, Coulthard's closest now. This is into the turn 1 we talked about. Yes, no, Schumacher's cut his nose off. David was too hesitant there. Probably rightly so, actually, otherwise he could have easily been out of the race. But Schumacher really kept his head and said, you're not coming through there, and David was only half-hearted about getting through.
Well, this is reminding me about Thierry Boutsen in the Williams at Hungary in 1990, whenever it was, because Schumacher is just staying where he is, and he's saying, get past me if you can, and they can't. And if Coulthard could get past the Ferrari, I'm sure he could narrow the gap.
Reminds me of Gilles Villeneuve in Jarama many, many years ago when he held up a train. That's Morbidelli leaving the pits after his 10-second stop-and-go penalty, after the Ferrari held up a train of cars for the entire distance, more or less. But he was fighting for the lead there. At the moment, it's for second place.
Well, it may be all Villeneuve's race, but it's a great race after him, because there's only 4 seconds between second and 7th, and Coulthard is now on the inside. He's going through.
That's a replay, Murray, of the incident we saw earlier where he got nipped into the apex and Schumacher holding his ground. But that's where he's going to overtake Michael Schumacher, and then he's going to be scampering off into the distance after Villeneuve.
So there is the race for second.
Here we go again. No, he didn't even dive out that time. Didn't feel he was close enough. Didn't want to give up and come out on the wrong line. Felt he couldn't make the move that time and wanted to keep on the clean part of the track and not... Look at Schumacher running so wide there. He's hurting. His tyres are a shot away already. And they're back in the 26s now. In fact, cars back in 7th and 8th place are faster than this bunch altogether. Schumacher's tyres are absolutely no good at all to him at the moment. Look at him, he's really struggling to keep the car where he wants it on the racetrack.
And this is helping Heinz-Harald Frentzen in 6th position. You see, Coulthard can do nothing about Schumacher. Alesi can do nothing about Coulthard. Hakkinen can do nothing about Alesi, but Frentzen can do something about Hakkinen because there's a gap between them and he's closing it. So Schumacher, Coulthard having a look, Alesi, Hakkinen, and then Frentzen, and Johnny Herbert is right with Frentzen.
Look at Schumacher's tyres, if you can home in on his rear tyres particularly. In fact, all 4 of his tyres. See the car snaking there. There's bands around them. The tyres are angry. They have had some blisters this weekend on the Goodyears, and blisters can come whether you get heat spots in the tyres, where the tyres are running way over their normal operating temperature in certain areas, and the tyre sort of erupts, and then you lose a massive amount of grip. Yes, look at the right rear tyre of Schumacher there. He's got blisters on his tyres, and that means that's why he's going so slowly.
And David Coulthard will be able to see that. And meantime, your prophecy is absolutely right, Martin. Villeneuve is running off and hiding. He is now over 16 seconds ahead on lap 13 as his teammate Heinz-Harald Frentzen desperately tries to catch the car in front of him, which is Mika Hakkinen. Ralf Schumacher in the pits. He was in 13th place. This is the first pit stop that we've had pretty early on. But Ralf Schumacher said just before the race began, he was really, really worried about where to the left front tyre of the Jordan. He said it's really caning the left front here in Spain. But look at that enormous gap as you look down between the leader, Jacques Villeneuve, and now that train of cars as Coulthard attacks.
Well, if Schumacher's on a 3-stop strategy, and I hope he is for his sake, because his tyres are ready for a stop now, then he's really got to just last another 2 or 3 laps to keep on schedule, and then he'll have to treat those fresh tyres with a little bit more care. The track is rubbering in all of the time. Coulthard is really in good shape this time for a punt down the inside. Yes, he's going to make it. He's made it this time. Up into 2nd place for David Coulthard, and Schumacher is really on the defensive. He should come in now. He's going to sail backwards. He should hold them up as much as he can and pit as soon as he can.
Yeah, because Jean Alesi is swarming all over him now. Coulthard will be able to get away. There's Alesi having a look. Hakkinen right up behind Alesi. Frentzen right up behind Hakkinen. And Johnny Herbert in 7th position. Look back. There is the Sauber. And yes, already David Coulthard is taking advantage of the fact that he's got ahead of Michael Schumacher to pull away. But he's got an enormous gap to close. Nearly 20 seconds between him and Villeneuve. Villeneuve potentially will almost be able to come in, make a stop and rejoin in the lead.
Well, we've got Ferrari in the pit lane, covers sort of coming off. McLaren mechanics out in the pit lane looking ready for a stop. I think they'll leave Coulthard out. I think they should leave Coulthard out. They were obviously going to bring him in because he was tucked up behind Schumacher, but now he's passed him. Now they've got the covers off, they're still going to bring him in fact. It's lap 14, 15 at the end of this lap. So they're still going to stop the McLaren, and the Ferrari's in the pits. Schumacher's in the pits, and Coulthard is in the pits too.
Here's Coulthard into the pit lane, and James Allen will be able to talk to him hopefully, but no, David, now you see we've got the times running, and here is the pit time coming up for David Coulthard, and with him is Michael Schumacher. So Coulthard 6 seconds, James Allen.
Wow, that was so close. Michael Schumacher dropped the clutch just as Jean Alesi came in. How they missed each other, I will never know. Meanwhile, David Coulthard in at the same time. My God, that was really, really close. 2 or 3 of the main runners that could have been eliminated in a single stroke. Slightly slow stop from Schumacher, but boy, looking at his tyres now, they are absolutely finished.
Yeah, and you can see that Mika Häkkinen there behind Jean Alesi is giving his tyres a very hard time. So David Coulthard has slipped down the field. Jean Alesi is up into second place. Williams are getting ready to bring Frentzen in. And meantime, Jacques Villeneuve stays out, 22 seconds ahead. There's the battle for second. Alesi and Häkkinen, and Michael Schumacher has been in, and so, of course, has David Coulthard.
So we know all the key players in this race are 3 stopping now. And Häkkinen, the McLaren mechanics are still out in the pit lane, so they should be expecting Häkkinen this time round. They have the covers off. Williams are ready. We think it's Frentzen, as Murray said. He's running a few seconds behind.
Yeah,
McLaren is in the pits.
Yeah, and it was Mika Häkkinen who dived in. Mika Häkkinen dived into the pit lane from third position. There's Alesi by himself. So Frentzen is up into third place now, and he, of course, has yet to stop. Race leader Villeneuve hasn't stopped. Häkkinen gets out. You notice how short the pit stops are. 6 seconds for Coulthard, 5.7 seconds for Mika Häkkinen.
Well, that's not a good way to stop your rear tyres blistering, the way Mika Häkkinen left the pits there. The surface temperature, as you're spinning the wheels like that and smoking them away, is enormous. He's going to have blistered those before he gets on the racetrack if he's not careful.
We're on lap 16 out of 65. You're watching Jean Alesi, who is in second place, and he's 21.6 seconds behind Villeneuve. Neither of them have stopped. Here's a replay coming towards us. Michael Schumacher. David Coulthard dives out of his slipstream as they go into turn 1. Jean Alesi is behind now in 4th position as Coulthard moves up into 2nd place, and Häkkinen in 5th position has a look. And he's now been into the pits. That is Jean Alesi. He's in 2nd position. And Villeneuve, I wonder what sort of a strategy Villeneuve is. He on a 3-stop?
Well, interestingly, Alesi's not come in the pits, and his mechanics are not even looking like they're about to get ready for a stop. Maybe Alesi's going for a 2-stopper and Berger for a 3-stopper. It's a good way to split the team up if the call is close. But we know that Frentzen is coming in to James.
Well, Martin, they say racing drivers who are at the very top can't have on days and off days. They must always be on it. Heinz Frentzen having another off day today. The tyres which just come off his car are very heavily blistered, particularly the right rear. But, well, Williams having a bit of a tough time with Frentzen. Meanwhile, Villeneuve sailing majestically on. We'll wait to see now whether they bring out the tyre covers for Villeneuve. But interestingly, Martin, Villeneuve using quite a lot less downforce than Heinz Frentzen. So he should be wearing the tyres more, I would have thought.
Well, I can tell you this, that Jean Alesi in 2nd place on lap 17 is closing marginally on Jacques Villeneuve. He's taken 1 second out of him on the previous lap. Villeneuve's lead has been reduced from 21.6 to 20.6 seconds. You're watching the race leader. He's on his 17th lap. He's going through to complete it, so no question of stopping there. Jean Alesi on a terrific charge, yet to stop. Frentzen up into 3rd place. And Fisichella is now 4th, and Damon Hill is in 5th position. Damon Hill in the Arrows Yamaha is higher than he has ever been this season. Higher not by a few seconds, but by a month in comparative terms. A terrific performance, whatever reason. Some of it, of course, will be due to the fact that people have been in for tyres and he hasn't. But never mind. Hill is in. And now Villeneuve leads. There he is. Alesi is in 2nd position, and Fisichella, and Hill stops. Oh, as I say it. Oh, that is 6 races and 6 failures for Damon Hill. And even his patience and tolerance must now be severely tested. He gives the thumbs up to show to his ex-Williams teammates, ironically enough, that he's perfectly all right. But it's obviously a sick motor car. I don't know, but I imagine from the way he stopped so quickly that it was engine. And you can see, just from his body language, that he must be saying to himself, how much longer can this go on?
Well, yes, it was either Magnussen there just leaving his pit stop. It was either gearbox or engine. Obviously, we saw the steam and smoke coming out from the back. What a shame. He was having a good scrap with Eddie Irvine, just 0.3 of a second away from him. I know he was 2-stopping. He was due in on lap 20, so just 2 laps to go to his first stop. Running up there in 5th place. What a shame for Damon Hill.
Yep, deep breath. Lap 19 out of 65. There's the leader, Jacques Villeneuve. 22 seconds, as near as makes no difference, ahead of Jean Alesi, now lapping faster again than the Frenchman in the Benetton, who's up into a good second position, ahead of Giancarlo Fisichella, who's in the pit lane. There he is, so he will have lost his third position now to David Coulthard, who has stopped. Eddie Irvine is in 5th place in the Ferrari, but has not stopped. And Olivier Panis, the top Bridgestone runner, all the rest are on Goodyears, in the top 6 places. Panis is in 6th place, just half a second behind Irvine, having a colossal battle.
Well, they've obviously fueled Villeneuve to do a 2-stop race, and probably kept a 3-stop strategy up their sleeve if they needed to. He's got such a cruising lead here that they look like they could well stretch Villeneuve. If he can get this Damon Hill, it looks like an engine, the left-hand bank of the engines giving up the ghost, and there he is pulling off onto the safe side of the racetrack. So Villeneuve, if he can get to 20 or 21, stretches it to being a 2-stop race, makes it even easier for him. We understand he's in next lap. Villeneuve in next lap, lap 20. And the other 2 drivers looking like they're on a 2-stopper is Alesi and Fisichella.
You can see the Williams mechanics already in a cluster at the end of the pit lane. I'm looking directly across the track at them now. They're in that classic formation, the U formation, that the driver just drives into. The tyres and wheels are all ready. As ever, Villeneuve puts his wheels on the curb and then lap Eddie Irvine in from 6th position, and that means to say Michael Schumacher goes up into 6th place, back into the points again. Michael Schumacher, who has stopped. And the tyre covers are off for Jacques Villeneuve. He's certainly coming in with a 22-second lead over Jean Alesi. Now he's coming out of turn 9 at the present moment, behind Gianni Morbidelli in 18th place. As you look at the McLaren, and Villeneuve comes out of the last corner very quickly. David Coulthard there in 3rd position, into the pit lane, James Allen.
Yes, the race leader comes in, a set of tyres that have already been used, scrubbed in, go onto the race leader's car. Fuel goes in. It'd be interesting to see if they put a lot of fuel in to try and stretch him through for a 2-stop. But 8.3 seconds, good stop by Williams. I must just tell you about the little cameo. When Damon Hill blew up, he walked through the Williams garage. He gave me a little wink as he went through, so he's obviously not too upset. He walked straight past Frank Williams, who was looking at his television set. Frank didn't even look up. Damon walked out of the back of the garage. What a difference a year makes.
Great stop there for Villeneuve. He was in 1st gear, absolutely ready to go, and that'll put him back easily out into the lead. Scrub tyres, I think that's a smart move. New tyres today, they build up an extra 10 or 15 degrees centigrade on brand new tyres around a circuit like this, and that can often be enough to tip them over the top into blistering. And I'm surprised how many stickers are going on the cars. Used tyres, they've had a heat cycle, they've had a scrub sometime through the weekend, and that makes the rubber a little bit harder, and that means they're a bit tougher and less prone to blistering.
We're just about a third of the way through the Spanish Grand Prix. One of the front runners, Jean Alesi in the Benetton, has been in the pits. Here's Simon Taylor.
Yes, the end of lap 21. In comes Jean Alesi, actually having led the race for 1 lap. It was Villeneuve, the early leader, who stopped at the end of lap 20. Alesi's brief moment of glory ending as he comes in for his routine stop, stops neatly on the spot, and a lot of smoke coming off the front of the car. That's from the brake discs. It's very, very hot out there. Very hard, this circuit, on brakes, but it's 8.8 seconds before the car gets back underway, back out into the race. Back to Murray Walker.
And we're on lap 23, and as you watch race leader Jacques Villeneuve used from Louise Goodman with Damon Hill in the pits.
Damon, I hate to blame Murray Walker. He was just telling us how well you were going, but it was looking good for you.
Yes, it was looking very good. And I was genuinely up in the points, well, knocking on the door of the points. And we were on a 2-stop strategy, and the car was running like a train, but unfortunately we had engine failure.
How confident were you for the race today?
Well, I wasn't optimistic, overly optimistic, but my goal was to finish. You know, I thought, you know, we have to finish a race, really, for the team and for the morale and everything. So it's very disappointing, especially as the car was going quite well in the race.
But what was it happening at the finish there?
The engine blew up. Yeah.
Back to you, Murray.
Well, to nobody's great surprise, one sadly has to say, because the Yamaha engine has been giving an enormous amount of trouble this year. It's conventional wisdom that the Arrows team are unlikely to be using it next year because they're talking to other engine manufacturers, but as far as I know, no decision has definitely been made, but there is a definite leader, very much so. It's Jacques Villeneuve, and we're on lap 24 of the 65-lap Spanish Grand Prix as you look down at Alesi and Michael Schumacher. Alesi in the Benetton Renault, Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari, round that long, long turn 3, up to another long one, which is turn 4. And Jacques Villeneuve is back again as the fastest man on the track in Spain, and he looks as though he's well on his way to a third win of 1997.
Panis in third place hasn't yet stopped. I can see his mechanics in the pit lane getting ready, but obviously the Bridgestones are lasting well for him here. The tyres have been a bit hard all weekend. All of the Bridgestone runners are in the second half of the grid in qualifying, but the durability of the tyre through the race looks good, and Panis is the surprise performer so far. Why is Michael Schumacher so far back? We don't know at the moment, lapping in the 23s. And what's happened to Heinz-Harald Frentzen? He's miles off the pace in 8th place, doing 26s. I don't know what he does in the middle of a race when it's not going well for him, whether he loses his head or just can't seem to. In fact, he's dropped to 9th place now on a 28.0. He's obviously got some kind of mechanical problem.
And that is Gerhard Berger in 10th position in the Benetton, ahead of Eddie Irvine in 11th place. Now we're on lap 25. Here is the order. Jacques Villeneuve is 3.7 seconds ahead of David Coulthard. They have both had their stops. We think David Coulthard's on a 3-stop strategy. There he is. We're pretty certain that Villeneuve is on a 2-stop strategy. Olivier Panis is third as you watch Ukyo Katayama. And there is David Coulthard. Panis is in third position, 6.8 seconds behind Coulthard, but going quicker. And he has yet to stop. Hakkinen is in 4th place, so both the McLarens are in the top 4 places. That's David Coulthard. 5th is Jean Alesi, who is right behind Mika Hakkinen in the McLaren. Michael Schumacher is in the points at 7th. 6th. Johnny Herbert is in 7th position ahead of Fisichella. And David Coulthard going through the field, passing Mika Salo in the Tyrrell Ford, and he is in 18th place. He's now been lapped by Villeneuve, he's been lapped by Coulthard, and in comes Panis. This is the stop we've been waiting for. This is the last man to make a stop. Olivier Panis goes out, and he will almost certainly has lost third position to Mika Hakkinen. So now the McLarens are second and third. Good news for Woking.
You saw Panis very calm there in his pit stop. Cleaning the mirrors with his hands. You have to keep the steering wheel straight so that the guys changing the front tyres have something permanent to aim at so they can put the wheel on. But this is the fight now for third place between Hakkinen and Alesi. Hakkinen locking front wheels as he has been doing all weekend, and I think Alesi's car's faster, so I would expect him to be crawling all over the back of this McLaren for the next few laps until he can pass him. Williams mechanics out in the pit lane. They've seen Frentzen dropping back with poor lap times, and they're obviously expecting him in now. I'd be surprised if it's just tyres.
And a real lock-up there from Mika Hakkinen, who certainly does give his tyres a very, very hard time. Round turn 9. John Alesi, who's had a lot of criticism, but nevertheless has had some good places this year. He's been up in the points twice this season. He's only had a couple of failures to finish. One of them while running out of fuel in Australia. He wasn't at all popular for that. And the tyre covers are now off for Heinz-Harald Frentzen to come in, and he is down in 9th position, lapping 126.9, compared with his teammate Villeneuve 123.5. So looking down at the battle, Hakkinen, behind Mika Hakkinen. You see Alesi, and behind Alesi you see Schumacher. James Allen, that's Frentzen.
Well, I can tell you, Murray and Martin, what the problem with Frentzen is today. It's terrible blistering of the tyres. I'm inspecting that one now that's coming towards me, and that's the left front. There's a huge band across it. It's a real mess. Back to you.
good time to come back because Michael Schumacher, look at him. He's doing now what he did at the beginning of the race. He's gaining places hand over fist. And Michael Schumacher is right up with Jean Alesi. He has passed Mika Häkkinen.
Yes, well, obviously, we've missed it while we were watching Frentzen in the pits. The TV director from Spain here missed the action. But clearly, here we go. We're going to get a replay. Häkkinen's running wide. Alesi's already passed him and had to go at him, put him offline. And Schumacher's used that opportunity to creep through. And now he's giving Alesi a hard time for good measure. Good scrap there for third, fourth and fifth.
Race order, lap 28, hit Villeneuve. He's only 3 seconds ahead of David Coulthard. They're lapping in identical times to the nearest 100th of a second as Mika Häkkinen, fifth now, comes into the pits. Coulthard is second, Alesi is third, Schumacher is fourth. Johnny Herbert will now go up into fifth position ahead of Mika Häkkinen. And and Fisichella will too.
Well, they put a lot of fuel in that car. Whether they actually touched earlier on before we had the replay, I don't know. But obviously, he must have had blistered tyres too because he's way out of sequence to come in on lap 27 for his second stop. Way out of sequence. It's much earlier than you would have expected him. Probably 5 laps earlier than he should have been in. So Häkkinen probably suffering from blisters too. The track temperature is going to be rising all the time. The sun is out again now, as you can see, glistening off of the red Ferrari there. So tyres. The Goodyear tyres look as if they've just been too soft for this race.
Yeah, the track temperature is up to 27 degrees now. It has been as high as 32 degrees on previous days, but it's much hotter now than it has been today. And Michael Schumacher that we're riding with is pursuing Jean Alesi for third position. You can see how close it is out of turn 9, coming through to complete the lap.
Now, what damages these rear tyres? What damages the rear tyres is wheel spin. That's what gives you the surface temperature. That's what gives you the blistering. The little eruptions of rubber that mean that basically the normal carcass of the tyre is not on the tarmac and not giving you the grip you normally expect.
Has Jacques Villeneuve got a problem because David Coulthard is catching him? 1:24.6 was Villeneuve's last lap time. 1:23.6 was Coulthard's last lap time, and the gap has come down to under 2 seconds. David Coulthard, the man who won the Australian Grand Prix at Melbourne for McLaren Mercedes, is catching Jacques Villeneuve, the winner in Brazil, the winner in Argentina, the man who failed to finish in Monaco, and Jacques Villeneuve is seemingly in a little trouble as Eddie Irvine comes into the pits to make his second stop. There he is, only 6.5 seconds. He came in from 10th position, but he's now made 2 stops. There's Villeneuve and Coulthard. Now, this is the battle for the lead. And into the pits goes David Coulthard. That was the answer. So remember, Jacques Villeneuve is on a 2-stop strategy. David Coulthard is certainly on a 3-stop strategy. Lap 30, and Coulthard is in for the second time. James Allen.
Well, David Coulthard comes in. We were deprived of a decent battle. Slight hesitancy about the McLaren mechanic. 10.9 seconds. 7.9 seconds, I beg your pardon. Looking at the tyre wear, pretty good, but I have to say that Coulthard and Alesi are using their tyres less than either of the Williamses. For some reason, Frentzen is really eating the tyres. Villeneuve not too bad, but Alesi's tyres do look rather lovely when they come off, and he's looking pretty strong today, I have to say.
Well, not nearly strong enough at the moment. He's nearly 18 seconds behind the man you are watching, Jacques Villeneuve, the brilliant Canadian who hit Formula One like a cyclone last year and won races in his very first season of Formula One. And he's now, as I say, 18 seconds ahead. That is Gerhard Berger, 9th. Or he was when he came in. And Frentzen behind him. Nakano is going well, the Japanese driver in the Prost Mugen. He's in 11th place, just out of the top 10. Now look at this lot. That's Katayama with the red visor.
I think there's going to be a lot of lapping going on today because there's a big speed difference between these cars, and the leaders are 2-3 seconds a lap faster than many of these tail enders. It means they're going to lap them at least twice, and we know that that Villeneuve took some wing off on the start line to give him some extra straight line speed to make it easier as Schumacher peels off into the pits.
So Michael Schumacher coming into the pits. He was right up behind Jean Alesi. James Allen.
It's going to be a race won and lost in the pits today, I think, Murray. New set of tyres going onto Michael Schumacher's car. That'll give him some solace because that car is really eating the tyres. But I say again, Jean Alesi on a two-stop strategy. 6 seconds. That's not a bad stop for Ferrari, but I say again, Jean Alesi on a two-stop strategy is looking very, very good.
Well, Villeneuve on a two-stop strategy, Alesi on a two-stop strategy. We're on lap 31. We're getting up towards the half-distance point of the Spanish Grand Prix at Barcelona. Lap 33 at Barcelona. Race leader, Jacques Villeneuve. He is 17.5 seconds ahead of Jean Alesi. They've both stopped once, and that is Fisichella in the pits from 7th position in the Jordan. That is Jarno Trulli, the Italian. He's down in 20th place. He's already been lapped, getting away in the Minardi. So again, lap 33, Villeneuve leads Alesi. There's a 17.5 second gap in terms of time between the two of them. But David Coulthard in 3rd place in the McLaren Mercedes is catching Alesi. Johnny Herbert is 4th in the Sauber Petronas, ahead of Olivier Panis. Coulthard has stopped twice, all the others in the top 5 have stopped once. Michael Schumacher has stopped twice. He's back in the points again after Fisichella's stop. And Michael Schumacher is lapping in 1:23.1 compared with Villeneuve's 1:24.5. So nearly 1.5 seconds faster Michael Schumacher is lapping than Villeneuve, who you are watching. And Schumacher is now back in the points, 6th position. It's a really, really exciting and interesting race. There's no sign of the rain that we were worried about. And that is Johnny Herbert. See the time ticking away, 6 seconds. And that is Herbert's 2nd stop. He'll be stopping once more. Round about, I would think, lap 44. Johnny Herbert coming in again. But Villeneuve has got to make another stop in what is a two-stop strategy race for him. Alesi in 2nd place, we also know, is on a two-stop strategy.
Well, I don't think anybody can be absolutely sure how many stops they're on. If they get some blistered tyres, they're clearly losing 2 or 3 seconds per lap. I mean, Schumacher, for example, is now back in his fastest lap of the race so far on a 22.7. That lap, he can be back as far as 25s and 26, as we saw earlier in the race. And I think a lot of pit stop strategies have gone completely out the window this afternoon. And as we look out of our commentary box window itself, there seem to be as many cars coming down the pit lane as down the pit straight.
And it's heartening that on lap 35 out of 65 of the 22 starters, only 2 have retired. Ukyo Katayama only did a comparatively short distance before he went out. Damon Hill, that is not good news. He was right up into 5th place in the Arrows Yamaha, and he started down in 15th position on the grid. He's gone out with a broken engine, and yet another race is run for him. Yet another failure, sadly, to finish in a Grand Prix, and he's now done 6 of them for the Arrows team. Villeneuve, lap 35, race leader. The lead is coming down. Alesi is lapping faster consistently than Villeneuve, but the French-Canadian has got a very comfortable cushion. A 16-second gap between the two of them will make him feel pretty confident. Not as confident as he might be, and a 20-second gap would be ideal, but he's got those 16 seconds in hand, and David Coulthard seems to have settled down into a rhythm marginally slower in 3rd place than Jean Alesi. So it's Villeneuve leading. We're riding with him now as he goes through to complete the lap.
Here we are into the pit straight, heading down towards turn 1. And there's a lot of black dust coming off his brakes, I've noticed, through all the laps, and that's why I suspect he's running a little bit slowly. Nakano having a pit stop, he's not a factor in this race, back in 15th place. Sorry, I would like to have talked you around the lap there with Villeneuve. We have no control over those pictures, so we've lost that. Nakano says, shall I bother to go out or not? Have we got some other kind of problem?
Well, that's not going to do it.
He could be out of the race.
Yeah,
he's obviously out of the race with that one. Some kind of gear selection problem, I would imagine, or they tend to change the tyres when you come in as a matter of course. You come into the into the box, and as more often than not, tyres are the problem. Here we are, later in the lap with Villeneuve, heading uphill now towards, listen to the throttle as he goes to the right-hander. Carefully on the power there. And this is Herbert and Coulthard for...
Well, David Coulthard is in third position, and John Lacey is in second place in the Benetton. There is the Frenchman, and Villeneuve, of course, is still well ahead of them. Now, Coulthard is actually easing up. You can see there is David Coulthard in third place. Behind him is Olivier Panis. It's getting a very close struggle now for second, third, fourth and fifth. Lacey is second. Coulthard is just behind him. Panis is catching them both. And Schumacher is catching all three of them. That is Lacey in second place. And he's 17 seconds behind Jacques Villeneuve. Is he being held up? Not at the moment, he's not. But he needs... It's one of the stewards ahead of him. It's Magnussen, I think, in... Yes, it's Jan Magnussen, and he's down in 16th place, the Danish driver.
Yes, the stewards are just not working around here. When I was out on the circuit on Friday and Saturday, they seemed hopeless through the fast corners for some reason, and they really... Look at the speed that Lacey's taking out of Magnussen. Magnussen's just keeping out of the way, basically, but just not working through the fast corners at all, and they've been seriously off the pace. Lacey going well. He's got a solid second place in the bag. I don't see him making any big inroads into Villeneuve's lead that he established earlier on. But Villeneuve, we understand that Lacey's on a long second stint. Villeneuve's cruising way up front. We've seen Villeneuve do that so many times. Establish a lead and then just hold off, and you begin to wonder if he has problems. But he doesn't seem to have any to our knowledge. But Lacey's car, we know, is working well. James tells us his tyres look good every time he stops, or the one time that he stopped. So Lacey in good shape. The race is going on behind him.
There is an 8-point difference between Jacques Villeneuve in the lead and Michael Schumacher, who is in 5th position at the present moment. There is a 4-point difference between them in Schumacher's favour in the World Championship. So if things stay as they are, it means that Jacques Villeneuve is going to move back ahead of Michael Schumacher in the World Championship. Eddie Irvine, who is in 3rd position in the championship, is only 12th in the Spanish Grand Prix as we watch Michael Schumacher coming through to complete his 37th lap. He's in 5th position. He's continuing to gain on Panis in front of him. The gap between Schumacher, who is 5th, Panis, who is 4th, is just over 6 seconds. Johnny Herbert is in 6th position in the Spanish Grand Prix. In the pit, in the points for the Sauber team.
And there's a left rear tyre's gone on the Tyrrell. He's obviously picked up a puncture, and at the end of the long straight, the centrifugal force of the top speed of the straight keeps the tyre up, and then as you slow down into the corner, finally it's overheated, the shoulders overheat, and the tread of the tyre separates from the sidewall. As you can see there, he did well to not throw that one into the tyre barrier.
Out of the race goes Mika Salo for Tyrrell Ford, and he was in 19th place. He had been lapped, and that makes the 3rd retirement. He joins Ukyo Katayama and Damon Hill, and that means to say that, and Shinji Nakano is out of the race, so that's the 4th retirement. And Olivier Panis, as you watch David Coulthard in 3rd position, is continuing to catch the McLaren, but he's got to get past the Stewart. Now, Jan Magnussen's got the whole of the straight to move over and let Panis through. Let's see if he does it. There is Coulthard 3rd. And Panis goes through, takes Jan Magnussen in 4th position. Now, it is actually looking good, very good indeed, for Olivier Panis in the blue Prost, and Rubens Barrichello is going out of the race. Rather unhappy one for the Stewart team after a superb Monaco, with Rubens Barrichello in 2nd place and Jan Magnussen in 7th position. This is Barrichello's 5th retirement, actually, from 6 races. That 2nd place of his at Monaco was the only finish he's had this year. But of course, it is enormously difficult for a new team to get the right car, the right engine, the right tyre. Look at Panis! Panis in 4th position, right up with David Coulthard. Now, this could be a tyre situation. David Coulthard has stopped once. Panis has only stopped twice. It's worth repeating that there's a tyre war here, just as there has been in every other Grand Prix. Goodyear versus Bridgestone. The top two are on Goodyear. The top three are on Goodyear, and Panis is on Bridgestone.
Well, we saw Panis just before his first stop, putting in his fastest lap to the race, so we know his tyres are holding up well. I don't know whether the Mugen Honda's got enough grunt. Yes, it has in the slipstream. He will outbrake him into this corner. Go on, Olive, you can do it. That's right. Up into the inside, hold your line, block him off now. Don't let him have a come back at you. Now, Panis is going to be on the podium this afternoon if he just keeps the pressure up all afternoon. He can go to sleep in the middle of the race from time to time, but I look at the distance he's pulled out already. Panis has a podium in the waiting if he just keeps pushing.
Yeah, your idea of going to sleep is different to mine. Here it is, a replay. Now watch Olivier Panis come out of the slipstream of David Coulthard. You tell us, Martin, that they get the Financial Times and their lunchbox out on the straight. Panis goes to sleep in the race. Comparative terms, Olivier Panis is driving an excellent race. He's up into the points, and Frentzen is in the pits.
Well, yet another set of completely destroyed Goodyears comes off Frentzen's car. I cannot understand the difference between his tyres and Villeneuve's. Perhaps Martin can explain that, but they've gone a different route on setup. I remind you that Villeneuve is using less downforce than Frentzen. The huge chunks missing from these tyres, huge bands all over them. Extraordinary.
Well, I'm sure it's in the traction areas that are damaging those tyres, but also if he doesn't have the same balance and the same driving style as his teammate, he's just going to destroy those tyres. Frenton's going to have to do 4 stops in this race. Coulthard coming, peeling into the pits. They've been practicing this pit lane. They knew they were going to have problems in this race with tyres. I stood on the inside of that pit lane on Friday, and you cannot believe the speed. They were coming in there up to the speed limit line, 120 kilometers per hour for the final part of the pit lane, and now the exit of the pit lane, he'll be straight onto the limiter, 120k, and you can see the white line he's going over. Now he can switch the limiter off and pedal to the metal and get on with it.
Yep, that was David Coulthard's third and presumably his final stop. We don't know for sure. But Jacques Villeneuve now is 15 seconds ahead of Alesi, who is catching him. There are 25 laps left in the race, and Alesi is catching him at the rate of 1 second a lap.
Well, Coulthard's made 3 stops in 40 laps, Murray. I don't see him doing 25 to the end of the race. I think he's going to have to make a 4-stop race. 5 sets of tyres. Remember, they have to commit as of mid-Saturday to the 7 sets for the rest of the weekend. Benetton coming in the pits. We see it's Gerhard Berger, I believe, for yet another stop. Berger, you can see the time in the corner of the screen from his pit stop. Just departing now. Gerhard never seems to be ready to depart when he's just finished his pit stop, and he's back onto the racetrack.
Well, I'll tell you this, Jean Alesi is continuing to catch Jacques Villeneuve at the exact rate of 1 second a lap. In another 14 laps, he could be with him, and that will be lap 56. Lap 44, 65-lap race. That's the leader. 13.8 seconds ahead as Alesi, the second-place man, comes into the pits for the second time. Now, obviously, that's going to slow him up and lose him a lot of time. But Jacques Villeneuve, similarly, has also got to come in again as Pedro Diniz leaves the race, leaves the pit lane. He's still running. He's in 11th place in the second arrows. His teammate Damon Hill is retired. That's Villeneuve. Lap 44, 17.8 seconds ahead when Alesi came in.
Now, if I were the Williams team, I'd be getting on the blower now to Villeneuve and say, start pushing again, because Olivier Panis can win this race. Believe me, he has the car underneath him because he has the tyres underneath him that'll stay with the pace. He can lap in the low 22s. Villeneuve's in the low 23s. There's 20 laps to go. Not a lot over 18 seconds in it. If Panis pushes hard, he can win this race. So Villeneuve's got to pick the pace back up again, and that's going to push his tyres maybe over the limit.
So stay tuned, don't go away. Let's join Louise Goodman with Rubens Barrichello.
Rubens, everything seems to go right for you in Monaco. It seems as though nothing's gone right for you this weekend. Why such a big difference in performance?
Well, I think Monaco was a I think the power of the engine was not so important. Here is a little bit more. We're working on it, but we're still suffering from it. So, and then the engine let me down now on the race as well. So we're working on them.
Tell us, how were your tyres last year? I know some of the Goodyear runners are having problems with blistering. How are the Bridgestones holding out?
Well, I was on a 2-stop strategy, so I was quite good. I was time-wise, I had Berger in front for a while, and I didn't know which position he was, but I was catching him up, so tires were lasting very well.
Thanks, Rubens. Back to you, Murray.
Lap 45, it's still Villeneuve, but Olivier Panis, who was making the running, and I'm sure will continue to do so, has been in for a second stop. He was in second place at the time. Here is Mika Häkkinen, who was in 7th place in the McLaren, and his teammate David Coulthard in 6th position. But the closing laps of this race are undoubtedly going to be really, really exciting. Villeneuve leading. Michael Schumacher is now challenging, and he has come up from 7th position after his second pit stop. Now here's Villeneuve coming in over to James Allen early.
Well, thank you very much, Murray. There's an awful lot riding on this pit stop. Jack Villeneuve's driven absolutely beautifully today. We're also expecting Michael Schumacher, so let's hope there's no confusion as Villeneuve exits the pit. He's driven a lovely race. 8 seconds. Panis is still a threat. Alesi's threat is perhaps dwindling now, but well, Villeneuve looking pretty strong, I must say.
And Michael Schumacher at this point is in 2nd position. There is the brilliant German, and I use the word advisedly. He's fought his Ferrari up in a magnificent drive, just like last year's when it was soaking wet and he dominated the race, and he's now in 2nd place, scything his way through the field. Villeneuve, of course, has been in to make his stop. They've just captioned him in 1st place. That doesn't coincide with my thinking here and the timings. But anyway, there he is, 1st or 2nd, and we'll know very shortly.
That's right. He's really been flying on this. He obviously kept his tyres nicely. In the early part of the stint, he probably just went easy on them, let them build up temperature. As they go down, as they wear down a little bit, they get less hot, so they're less likely. There's less rubber moving around, and it generates less heat. They're less likely to blister. And then Schumacher pushed very, very hard. He's got some traffic here now. The Ferrari mechanics are out in the pit lane. Blanket's just coming off the tyres now, so usefully for Michael as he's catching that traffic. Watch him steam in that pit lane now. Look how fast he goes in there. See, he's really hard on the gas down there, looking for the 120. He might even lock his front to there. 120 kilometres. There they go. You see the 2 metal strips sticking up at the bottom as to earth the car out while they're refueling it, in case there's a spark that causes a fire. Used tyres going on. Good move. Good stop. 6.8. Schumacher's got a good chance of a podium now. Wait for the line. Here comes the line. Now he can really go flat out now towards the first corner. Unfortunately, 2 cars ahead of him. He'll be disappointed about that. Another one just passing. That's significant. I think that's a Lacey. I think that's a Lacey just passing him in 3rd place. Schumacher in 4th. What is significant also is that Panis was ahead of Jean Alesi after they rejoined after the pit stops.
Yes, Villeneuve is in the lead. Jacques Villeneuve leads on lap 47 out of 65. Olivier Panis is in 2nd place, and he's not only in 2nd place, but he's gaining on Jacques Villeneuve. Alesi is in 3rd position, just ahead of us. As you look there at the Williams Renault of Jacques Villeneuve.
I think the reason that the captions are wrong because the start-finish line is after where they electronically tag the cars into the pit lane. So obviously cars are making pit stops so often, and cars going down the pit straight passing a different line as to why the captions are coming up wrong. Jordan in the pits, Ralf Schumacher back in 11th place, having an awful afternoon, having started at the back of the grid as a penalty for stalling his engine. Back on board with Villeneuve. Now he's got to push. Panis is doing a 22.6. And on that lap actually slipped back to 24.2, I suspect, with traffic. Villeneuve still in the low 23s. Panis has got 13 seconds. Neither of them to catch up. Neither of them have got to pit again I would guess. So it's a straight fight now. Can Panis catch Villeneuve?
We're on lap 48 out of 65, and that's Gianni Morbidelli driving his first Grand Prix for Sauber, ahead of Jacques Villeneuve. And if Villeneuve can't get past him, it's going to give Panis the opportunity to close up on the race leader, Jacques Villeneuve. But then he too will have the problem of getting past Gianni Morbidelli, so it'll probably cancel things out.
Well, this is
Schumacher and Alesi. So, Schumacher in 4th position, Jean Alesi in 3rd position, the Benetton on the left, the Scarlet Ferrari behind him, and you can see how much quicker Michael Schumacher is going than Jean Alesi. He's closing up on the Benetton, and it's still Villeneuve, and Schumacher now right there.
Well, when we saw Alesi just flash past Schumacher as Schumacher exited the pits towards turn 1, was a very significant moment for Schumacher's afternoon. He's going to damage his tyres so much now. If he can indeed pass Alesi, I'm not sure he'll be able to do it. I'm not sure his car is good enough. And the longer he stays in his dirty air going through corners like that, long, fast corners, you see him dropping away because he understeered wide. He had to get out of the throttle, I would guess. And that's going to stop him having a counter-attack on Panis. Panis now just 11.6 seconds behind Villeneuve. Panis can win this race.
1.3 seconds Panis took out of Villeneuve's lead on the last lap. We're on lap 49. It's a 65-lap race, 16 laps left. So Panis is going to be right with Villeneuve at the current rate, about 5 or 6 laps before the end of this race, and then it's going to be a battle royal. As I've said many, many times in the past, and I'll doubtless say many times again, catching up is one thing, getting past is another, and Villeneuve would be very, very hard to pass, but maybe there are more tyre stops yet to come. Tyres are taking a terrible hammering.
But remember back in Brazil, Murray, where Villeneuve, we started talking about, has Villeneuve got a problem? And then when in Argentina, when he was sick, you know, is he running out of steam? He seems quite content to let somebody just swan up behind him and then just hold them at bay. So maybe he's doing that, but there's not enough of a comfort zone there today, knowing that the tyres can go away from him.
He's just completed a lap. 11.6 seconds was the gap between him and Olivier Panis. I wait for the Prost Mugen to go through, and it's 10.8 seconds. So once again, Panis has reduced the gap. There he is, coming up behind Ralf Schumacher. That is Olivier Panis in 2nd position, right with Ralf Schumacher, who is 13th in the Jordan Peugeot, and a lap behind, effectively, the Prost. Johnny Herbert.
Herbert's 5th place, a great stop for him, 6.5 seconds. The mechanics are really getting slick, and it's not surprising. They've had a lot of work to do this afternoon. They're working as hard as the drivers. Something smoking at the back of the Jordan. Could just have been the left front locked, and then the smoke going up through the Venturi underneath the car, looking like an engine problem. I don't think it was, but this is actually bad news for Panis, because that Jordan's got a stonking Peugeot engine in it, and it's not going to be that easy to pass.
15 laps left at the end of this one, and Villeneuve is leading a very quick Olivier Panis in the background there by some 11 seconds. Jean Alesi is in 3rd position, not gaining on Panis. Michael Schumacher is in 5th position, not at the present moment gaining on Jean Alesi. And Johnny Herbert is in 5th place with David Coulthard catching him. But Coulthard in the McLaren as Irvine leaves the pits in 10th position. Coulthard, 6th in the McLaren, is catching Johnny Herbert. Fisichella is 7th, Hakkinen is 8th, Frentzen 9th.
Well, this is significant now for the race. Alesi's beginning to catch Panis because Panis is tucked up behind the Jordan and is not making any impression. He's suddenly in the dirty air of a car that we know is incredibly fast in a straight line here all weekend. So Panis needs to dispatch Schumacher very quickly. Schumacher is smoking a bit. He may take himself out of the race shortly.
Alesi whizzed past Pedro Diniz. Michael Schumacher did exactly the same thing. Now, I said earlier on that the gap between Alesi and Schumacher was 1.2 seconds. Doesn't look that to me on time. We're on lap 51, and Villeneuve looking good for 10 World Championship points. Olivier Panis looking good for his highest finish this year. He was 3rd in Brazil. If he finishes 2nd here, he will get 6 World Championship points to add to the 9 that he has already got. but that's of academic interest because here is the battle. Alesi third, Schumacher fourth, virtually nothing in it in terms of lap times. Now they're round turn 9, dropping downhill at about 140, 150 miles an hour, backing off slightly for turn 11. Now, if Schumacher comes out of this corner quicker than Alesi, they're building up to 200 miles an hour here. And Schumacher is not only catching Alesi, but Alesi is catching Panis.
Yeah, Panis is still tucked up behind the Jordan. Had a good look out of the commentary box to see them through the last corner. He just can't get close enough to the back of it to get a tow. The Jordan mechanics are out. I don't know whether it'll be for Fisichella or Ralf Schumacher. I hope for our sake it's for Ralf Schumacher, but I want to see Panis. I mean, remember, Panis is lapping Ralf Schumacher. He should get out of the way if he can just get close enough to get the blue flags out. Oh, there's somebody who's blown up. Yeah. And unless it was a great big cloud of tyre smoke, but that's an awful lot of smoke just coming from the tyres. But I want to see Panis now getting some clear air. Otherwise, we're not going to have a good scrap to the last few laps with Villeneuve. I think it could. That's just taken the steam out of Panis's charge, sadly.
We're on lap 52 now, and it was the Jordan of Ralf Schumacher that caused that smoke. He is out of the race. He was well down in 13th position. He was holding up Panis, so Panis has now got a clear track in front of him, but the gap between Panis and Villeneuve has gone up to 11 seconds, and the gap between Schumacher and Alesi is surely coming down. It was 1 second. Down to the last corner. This is it again. This is where the speed again builds up to 200 miles an hour as they come through to complete their 52nd lap, with Villeneuve now a comfortable 12 seconds ahead of Panis and lapping quicker.
Well, I think Panis can still catch Villeneuve if he gets on with it now, but apparently there was a huge cheer, we hear from our pit crew, in the Prost garage when they saw Schumacher's car beside the racetrack. Michael Schumacher running wide again in 3. We did see smoke coming from that Ralf Schumacher car, and obviously the engine was in its last throes. The death rattle finally came, but that's Fisichella in for a stop. Not a great afternoon for Jordan. 7th place at the moment for Fisichella. He'll slip back behind Häkkinen in the run-up to the race after this pit stop.
Lap 53.
Seems to have a job getting it into first gear there, heading off down the pit lane towards his last stint of the race.
Lap 53. Watch Alesi and Schumacher battling for 4th place, while I tell you that the retirements are Barrichello, Salo, Nakano, Damon Hill and Shinji Nakano. 17 left out of the 22 that started the Spanish Grand Prix. Well, sadly, another double retirement for the Arrows team. Pedro Diniz is out of the race. Olivier Panis is now right in traffic. He's up with Eddie Irvine in 12th position as the battle between Alesi and Schumacher rages.
Well, wouldn't surprise me if Eddie Irvine is less than helpful in letting Panis pass. Panis has made a real pig's ear of getting through this traffic. Villeneuve's now off for a clear win, and Panis, instead of chasing him home and having a great chance to take a superb win here this afternoon, has now got his mirrors full of Jean Alesi and Michael Schumacher all at the same time, and that's not a nice feeling. He's really got to nail this traffic, be very ruthless, very aggressive, and I hope he hasn't just settled for 2nd place, because he may have it taken away from him.
But it's not inconceivable that the Ferrari team, knowing that Michael Schumacher in 4th place is right up with Alesi, and now with Panis, is saying to Eddie Irvine, give the hardest possible time you can to Alesi.
Well, that's Alesi right up behind Panis. Now, Panis had a go at Eddie Irvine into turn 1, didn't come off, and actually dropped back more into the clutches of Alesi. Puff of tyre smoke there. It's a horrible smell when you follow a car with the burning rubber as you go through the cloud of tyre smoke, but I don't understand why Olivier's struggling so much. Maybe he's just picking up a lot of understeer, can't get the front of the car where he wanted on the racetrack in traffic, because he's gone absolutely nowhere since he came up behind Ralf Schumacher, and now this little queue. And Alesi's gesticulating, I would have thought, to the marshals, as much as say, where are the blue flags? We're lapping these guys. Where are the blue flags? I haven't seen a blue flag waving yet at all. There's Panis running wide. Look, Panis running wide. to get some drive out of the corner. He's got to get into, yes, Lacey's saying, get the blue flags out, get them waving, pull this lot out of the way so we can have a good scrap to the finish.
And rightly so, riding with Jean Lacey, third position, chasing Olivier Panis, who has got ahead of him Eddie Irvine, who's a lap behind, except for a car's length. Now, there is Panis having another go at Eddie Irvine. Once again, Irvine closes the door. Once again, Lacey gets a bit closer. And ahead of Irvine is Jos Verstappen in 11th place in the Tyrrell. So there's two battles going on here, effectively a lap apart. And Panis goes through this time. Panis goes through. Irvine runs wide. Panis goes through. Lacey goes through. Irvine will stay tight to let his teammate Michael Schumacher through, and he's done so. Michael Schumacher moves a lap ahead of Eddie Irvine. We're now on lap 57. Jacques Villeneuve, meantime, has profited from all that. He got through that traffic cleanly, and he's now 16.5 seconds ahead of Olivier Panis, who's got Lacey. There he is right behind him, who's got Schumacher. There he is, number 5. Michael Schumacher, 4th place. And here is a replay. Lacey furiously saying to the marshals, as Martin has just said, for heaven's sake, do something with the blue flags and tell Eddie Irvine to move over and let me through. Well, it's happened. But it's happened too late. Olivier Panis now coming up to Jos Verstappen in 11th position and going past.
Yes, he's going to pass the Tyrrell quite easily there. That's an important move for him with just a few laps to go, because that'll give him a bit of clear space now. He wants to make hay while the sun's shining and pull out as much distance as he can, while Lacey and Michael Schumacher have to negotiate that Tyrrell to drop them out of his tow, so they can't tow him down the straight, and then he'll have 2nd place in the bag. But it's still going to be touch and go for 3rd place. I'm not sure Schumacher's got the car to do it with. As I said, he's been in the slipstream of Lacey for this whole stint, and his tyres are going to be feeling pretty second-hand.
3 points potentially for Michael Schumacher, 10 points potentially for Jacques Villeneuve, the two of them leading the World Championship. So it's really going to pay Michael Schumacher if he can get past Jean Lacey, never mind getting past Olivier Panis. And they're both being held up by Verstappen, who lets Lacey through. Is he going to let Michael Schumacher through? We're on lap 58 now. So there are 7 laps, including the one that they are on. And Villeneuve has got a 16-second cushion. Panis. Verstappen lapped. Schumacher. The gap between Schumacher and Lacey is a visual one. It's about a second. Puff of smoke from the rear tyres of Lacey's car there as he brakes very hard to go through and take Katayama.
I think Panis has got an engine problem there. The bottom of the car does tend to hit the ground halfway down the straight where they were going over, but it seemed more like blue smoke to me. And then I thought I saw another puff from the back of Panis's car when he shifted down into the corner, but nothing more to be seen at the moment. Then Lacey's got past the Tyrrell well. Michael Schumacher's still stuck up right up close underneath his rear wing, but
so we're on lap 59. Villeneuve leading Panis by 15 seconds. Lacey is 3rd, just 2 seconds behind Panis, and just ahead of Michael Schumacher 4th. David Coulthard in the McLaren is in 5th position. Johnny Herbert in the points. Quite several retirements, 6 to be exact. Ralf Schumacher is one of them. Rubens Barrichello out in the Stewart. Mika Salo out in the Tyrrell. Shinji Nakano out in the Prost. Damon Hill out in the Arrows, so both Arrows retired. And Ukyo Katayama out in the Minardi. And now we're into lap 60. And Verstappen has still not been passed by Michael Schumacher, which really does surprise me. Maybe the flags are being wet. And there again is that puff of smoke from the rear of Panis's car as Lacey goes through and takes Trulli, who is in 15th position. That's the 2nd lap in succession. We've seen that significant puff of smoke as Olivier Panis slowed for the right-hander at turn 1.
Well, we know that Eddie Irvine has a 10-second penalty for ignoring the blue flag, although I didn't see the blue flags too much. There it is now, and I think Jos Verstappen will be next to star on our blocking a penalty 10-second board for doing a similar thing to Michael Schumacher. So I'm not sure there's enough time in the race now for them to activate that, although actually no, they have to come in within 3 laps. They have to come in within 3 laps and take that penalty, otherwise they're excluded from the race.
So Verstappen could be very much affecting the World Championship situation at the moment, holding up Michael Schumacher, who is unable to get past the Tyrrell Ford, because Jacques Villeneuve is very shortly about to, well, he's just started, there he is, his 61st lap. So 5 laps to go. 5 laps of this 3-mile circuit, just under 15 miles, because it's 2.9 to be exact, and he's 11.5 seconds ahead of Panis, who is catching him and who's now hopefully clear of traffic. Panis actually took 2 seconds out of Villeneuve's lead, but Villeneuve knows exactly what the situation is. Ferrari out, that's Eddie Irvine.
That's Eddie Irvine taking his 10-second penalty there. The team are timing him. Watch the board at the front of the car. The white lollipop will go up. Your 10 seconds is up. On you go. That's your afternoon completely wrecked, but it wasn't too special anyway. Fighting with a Tyrrell for 11th place is not where you expect to be in a works Ferrari, especially when the other one is right up front chasing a podium.
Ferrari out, Ferrari in again as Eddie Irvine rejoins. As you say, he's had a pretty grim Spain. Started well down on the grid in 11th position. Jacques Villeneuve out on his own, rounding turn 9. Question is, this is going to be the interesting lap. He was 11.5 seconds ahead of Olivier Panis when he went into his 61st lap out of 65. Now you see he goes across the starting grid into his 62nd lap, and if that gap is not reduced, there is Olivier Panis coming through, and the gap between Villeneuve and Panis now is 9.9 seconds. So again, Panis has gained on the Williams. 198
miles an hour there for Panis as he heads into turn 1. I'm really annoyed with that traffic, and I'm really annoyed with Panis taking so long to get past them. Here he is again, back in the 22s. I don't think he would have passed Villeneuve in a month of Sundays, if I'm completely honest, but I would like to have seen him cruise up behind that Williams and have a good go about it. We've been robbed of a good finish to the race there, but now he's taking 1.5 to 2 seconds a lap out of Villeneuve, but there's not enough time to do anything about it.
Yes, if he finishes in second place, it won't be his first second, because he's been there before. In fact, he's been there before twice, but they were by default rather than by a fine drive. But as you say, if he got through the traffic cleaner and quicker, he could well have been battling with this man, Jacques Villeneuve, who's now very well on his way to yet another Grand Prix victory. That would be his 9th in only his 2nd Grand Prix year and his 22nd Grand Prix in all. So 9.9 seconds was the gap. There's Villeneuve into lap 63. So there's this lap 60. There is Panis in the background. And there may be only 64 laps left. We're not sure about that, because the second warm-up lap could well have been taken off the 65-lap distance.
Well, the cars weren't allowed to refuel on the grid, so they have to reduce the race by the warm-up lap. They're not, otherwise some of these cars would run out of fuel. They're filled that closely to the limit that you can't suddenly make them do a lap of the racetrack and then not count that towards the race distance. But Villeneuve now looking very comfortable for yet another win. But let's quickly talk about Frentzen back in 9th place. Another disastrous afternoon for him, where he gets buried in the pack off of a poor start and just cannot seem to do anything about it.
Well, if they stay where they are now, the gap between Villeneuve and Schumacher in terms of World Championship points in this race is going to be 7. So Villeneuve will move back into the lead of the World Championship with a 3rd victory in his 6th race by 3 points from Michael Schumacher. Schumacher is now some 5.5 seconds behind Jean Alesi as a result of the traffic in general, and Jos Verstappen in particular. And now Jacques Villeneuve is on his 64th lap. And clearly there are going to be 65 laps, with them not having been allowed to refuel. As we look back down the long straight at Olivier Panis, that is the second place man. An excellent drive, 8.5 seconds now behind Villeneuve. He's taken another second out of Jacques' lead, but Villeneuve is probably quite content with that. As I said earlier, he knows what the situation is. He will have been getting pit board signals. He will have been talking about things on the radio with his team, and he knows exactly how he's got to pace himself.
One good scrap left now towards the end of the race for 5th and 6th place. Two British boys, David Coulthard and Johnny Herbert. Coulthard in 5th, 2 points at the moment for that. And the final point for Johnny Herbert, but he's just 0.5 seconds behind going into these last couple of laps. And I doubt the director's going to pick that up, because he's missed just about everything else this weekend. So we'll have a good look out of the commentary box window to see how that scrap's going on.
And if Johnny Herbert finishes in the points, that will be only the second time he has done so this season. But now, lap 64, the end of coming up, and Jacques Villeneuve goes through to start to take the checkered flag. So it was, and I apologise, 64 laps rather than 65. That has completely mystified us, because they were not allowed to refuel. But there, finishing in second position, is Olivier Panis, and we just wait for Jean Alesi now to come through in third position, and Michael Schumacher in fourth position. Who is going to be fifth?
Johnny Herbert passed Coulthard on the last lap for 2 points. A brilliant move, and unfortunately we didn't see it. We did call it right, Murray. It's 64 racing laps, of course, with the 2 warm-up laps because of the false start there with Ralf Schumacher.
Olivier Panis at last catches Jacques Villeneuve and rightly stays behind him. And in the World Championship now, the leader is the man you're looking at with his victory arm outstretched. Jacques Villeneuve back 3 points ahead of Michael Schumacher, who slips back from first in the championship to third. Olivier Panis, though, moves up from 8th in the World Championship to third, and Eddie Irvine moves down from third to fourth. David Coulthard, who was tying for third in the championship with Irvine, is now fifth, and 3 drivers still on 10 points are tying for 6th position in the championship: Heinz-Harald Frentzen, Gerhard Berger and Mika Häkkinen. But this championship has got a long, long way to go. This was race 6. There are 17 races. There's even talk of 18 races in the championship this year, and there are only 3 points between them at this stage, and it was a very different situation last year. But Ferrari are still leading the World Championship as you watch the Constructors' World Championship, as you watch Jacques Villeneuve, Olivier Panis and Jean Alesi come into the pit lane. Ferrari lead the Constructors' Championship by just 1 point and 20 points ahead of McLaren third. Benetton are fourth, and the Prost team are in 5th position.
Driver of the day must be Jacques Villeneuve. He led from start to finish, pretty much had it under control. Surprise of the day must have been Olivier Panis. The Bridgestone stayed with him very, very well. He was able to push, able to do some very fast lap times in the low 22s, just off the lap record, which actually surprisingly ended up being Giancarlo Fisichella on a 22.2. But Panis there in the low 22s pretty much all of the time in clear air. Bad job of the traffic. Michael Schumacher did well in 4th place with a car that was eating its tyres. Alesi had a good setup to take the final well-deserved podium position.
Dickie Stanford on the left, the Williams team manager, talking to Charlie Whiting, who is the FIA race boss. And there is the imperturbable Jacques Villeneuve after his 3rd victory of 1997, getting on to the scales. All the drivers in the top places are weighed after the end of the race to make sure that together with their car they've not broken the weight limit. There is Michael Schumacher talking to David Coulthard, respectively 4th and 5th.
Lots of shaking of heads and looking at tyres and what happened to your tyres, Michael? Mine did this. And so it goes on. Olivier there looking pretty happy with himself. I think he'll be off to the hairdressers this week. But he's going to be happy with that. Prost will be very happy with the performance of their car today. It's looking good for them. And Alesi finally on the podium for Benetton. Some sort of consolation, but still I don't suspect what they really would hope to have achieved this weekend.
Yeah, I think there's Ronaldo on the left, who distinguished himself last night at the magnificent stadium here at Barcelona. And I don't think Alesi will be very pleased. It's his first podium this year. Benetton have been really struggling, and at last they've got it together in Spain. Again, not for Gerhard Berger in 10th position. The winner, Jacques Villeneuve. And once again, we will soon hear the strains of "Oh Canada" ringing out. National anthem for the winning constructors, Williams with the Renault French engine. Villeneuve has now won every Grand Prix in 1997 that he finished in. 6 races, 3 failures to finish, and 3 victories for maximum points, 30 World Championship points, return him to the lead in the Drivers' Championship. Olivier Panis, real encouragement for the Prost team, which Alain Prost, the great world champion, bought from Ligier and his other shareholders. And Jean Alesi, a very happy man, perhaps showing that Benetton are really getting back on the pace.
An all French-speaking podium, as it happens, here for the Spanish Grand Prix, Murray.
Indeed, and Dickie Stanford, very much the Englishman, taking the Constructors' Trophy for the Williams team. Well, we're going to be hearing from all 3 of them, from Jacques Villeneuve, the winner, from Olivier Panis in 2nd place, and from Jean Alesi in 3rd position very shortly. But, as you say, 3 French-speaking drivers have dominated the race here today.
And shaking the French champagne, no doubt. Ironically, it's the one thing, the one place you can't do that is at the French Grand Prix. You're not allowed to have alcohol on the podium in France, which always makes me smile because of the origin of that stuff that gets in your eyes and makes you all sticky and generally makes you feel horrible. But they're off to the press conference now, where they're going to go and sit down in to the unilaterals around the world, where they'll be given some nice towels and some water to drink, and generally a chance to start to unwind.
And while we're talking about France and its success in Spain, it's very well worth noting that the French Renault engine powered the winning car of Jacques Villeneuve and the third place Benetton of Jean Alesi. And Renault are retiring officially from Grand Prix racing at the end of this season and handing the reins over to a private firm, Mechachrome, on a very high note.
Is that the 350th win for Goodyear, Murray?
It is the 350th win for Goodyear, and their tails will be very high because they've got some real competition from Bridgestone in all the Grand Prix this year. Bridgestone have entered the Grand Prix field. They're trying very, very hard after having done extremely well in American kart racing, and they're trying to do the same in Grand Prix. Goodyear have reacted brilliantly, produced all sorts of new tyres, new constructions, new compounds, and they've got a very well-deserved 350th win here, and heaven knows where Grand Prix racing would be if it wasn't for Goodyear. As we look down into the Parc Fermé, there are the cars that are going to be checked.
Yes, they'll go into scrutineering now and be checked for legality. They'll check the plank, as we call it, the piece of wood underneath that must only have less than 1 millimetre worn off it in specific places to make sure they're not running the cars too low to gain unfair advantage, and various other dimensions of the car will be checked to make sure that the cars are running legally, as it were. Just looking down, we've seen all the guys with their chins up on the podium. Disappointed people will be Hakkinen back there in 7th, Frentzen in 8th. We've talked about a poor weekend for Jordan with Fisichella in 9th.
Third victory of the season. This must be particularly pleasing considering the last 2 races.
Yeah, it's very pleasing because with the whole team Williams Renault, we had worked really hard since the beginning of the season. We've had some good results, but with the speed we had, there's a lot of races that we threw away. And after the stupidity of Monaco, it's good to win a race. We did a lot of testing here all the winter. We spent it here, and the car didn't feel as good as in the winter. The tires were different, and in the middle of the race, when the heat picked up, then it was very difficult. But being in the front and having Michael second blocking everybody else gave us a good help today.
Did your pit stop strategy of doing 2 stops rather than 3, was that planned?
Yeah, we were planning on 2. We knew it was risky on the tires, but we did 3 once this year, and usually there's more chances of something going wrong when you do 3.
Were you worried towards the end of the race because Olivier seemed to be catching up on you?
No, because we had a big gap, and I knew that there was no point in pushing because the tires are on an edge here. And as soon as he went quicker, we could extend, we could keep up. So I wasn't really afraid, just in case we had some traffic or a tire problem. And you know, he did a great race because he didn't start from the front and he finished second. So that was pretty impressive.
Jacques, well done. Olivier, you qualified 12th, so to be here second today must be particularly pleasing for you.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy because the qualify is very, very difficult for me because the tire is too hard, but I show for the race is maybe it's very good result. I would like make the point. And the 2-stop strategy is very good for me because the wear the tires after the warm-up is fantastic. It's no bliss, everything is okay. I'm very happy for the team because he make very, very good job, very strong job this race.
Are you expecting improvement in your qualifying performance, especially from the tires?
Yeah, it's 2 solutions. It's quick in qualify is very difficult for the race. The tires improve every time. And this tire for the race is fantastic, but for the qualify is very difficult. Maybe improve for the qualifying, but the race is very, very important.
You're now 3rd in the championship. What are your feelings towards the rest of the season?
My feeling, I would like to finish the 5th position in championship. The driver, for me, is fantastic race, and for the team also. But it's very, very difficult. But the car is very good. The 2 races ago, a new engine for the French Grand Prix. I think so. It's a very good result every season.
Olivier, well done. Jean, this is the first podium appearance for you this season. You must be delighted.
I'm really happy. I tell you, the beginning of the season was a nightmare for us. We were not expecting what's happening, and we worked quite a lot here, and we find finally a good setup for low fuel and high fuel. So to finish on the podium, really, it's great, and it's a lot of oxygen for everybody in the team.
You seem to have a hard race out there. Were you worried about Michael Schumacher towards the end of the race?
No, I was worried about Irvine because I know he's such a very strange driver. So to overtake him was quite tough, much more than keeping Michael behind me.
And what are your feelings towards the rest of the season? Are we going to see Benetton improving from now on?
I'd like to say it's going to be better, but we have to see on the next Grand Prix if really we are on a good way. I'm really believing of my team technical stuff. Probably we will have some very good new things on the new racing coming. I'm quite confident, really.
Jean, well done. Well, Jacques, we now go to Canada, to your home race, and you're leading the championship by 3 points. What are your feelings about that?
Well, it feels great to go to Canada leading the championship, definitely. Canada will be a very, very important race for me. There's a lot of home crowd, and you know, last year we had a pretty good race, but we didn't win, so hopefully we can do one better this year.
Thank you. Now, could we have some comments on the race?
Well, then there we are. Jacques Villeneuve.